Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. It's time for our USC defense evaluation of the week and what was by far their best performance against Stanford, really just dominating them, especially in the first half. Stanford could not get into any of their offense. You saw the negative plays, you saw the turnovers, but most importantly, very limited blown assignments, bad run fits. This was by far the cleanest performance we've seen from this USC defense. And again, it's starting to come together. Now, before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys and especially the USC fans. This team I've had so much fun talking about. We talked a lot in the offseason, kind of one of my picks to win a national championship. And as we've gotten into the season, like the support from the USC fans truly does mean a lot. So if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. But more importantly, and again, the best part about doing this is talking with you guys in the comment section, hearing your takeaways. So drop your takeaways in the comment section. And without further ado, let's get into this. And I want to start with just some overarching takeaways. And that was one, dominant first half. Again, no blown assignments. But most importantly, what you saw from Lincoln Riley, Alex Grinch, and the staff is that foot was not off the gas. I mean, they took the foot off the gas a little bit on the offensive side of the ball. We all know that. And I guess I'd preface with the reason I'm not talking as much USC offense is we know what they are. That is the best offense, I think, in college football. You have the number one quarterback, probably the best playmakers, a dominant offensive line. The real storyline for USC, I think, in this season, if they're going to do something special and win a national championship, which I think is a growing possibility, it's going to be on the shoulders of this defense taking strides continually throughout the season as they get into Pac-12 play. So that's why the focus is more on the USC defense. I'm not ignoring the offense. That offense, I don't even know how you stop it. It's elite, but I do want to focus more on the defense. And Lincoln Riley did not take his foot off the gas. You know what I mean? Like in the second half, the offensive guys the offensive starters taking a seat. The defense, like they rolled out their starters well into the third quarter, and Lincoln Riley was just, coaching these guys up. A little element of like Nick Saban when Nick Saban's blowing out teams in the second half, but he's still holding his guys to a really high standard. I think you saw that from the USC coaching staff, and you're starting to see this defense and the staff expect dominance. Like this is not a defense that I think, hey, we're just going to try to like bend but not break. If this team gained 10 yards, like that was not good enough for USC. And that mentality of I want to come out and physically impose our will on the defensive side of the ball was like my biggest general takeaway. Now, getting into some of the performers and takeaways, I want to still start on the defensive line. This is a group that probably continues to be one of the most underrated units across the entire country. And like the conception is USC soft on the trenches, not really that talented. That couldn't be farther from the truth, especially this year. Not only are they talented, but man, are they deep. Rolling in the second and third string guys, they are all really, really good. And it starts with Bear Alexander again. He stole the show. This dude, his quickness off the ball for how big he is, it's next level. You haven't really seen an interior offensive line group be able to block a guy like Bear Alexander. You add a guy like Kyan Barrs. It's, one of the better interior defensive line duos I think that you see across the country. And I'm not blowing smoke there. Like they are dominating every single snap. And then the depth, like rolling in a guy like Jack Sullivan, who is still really good, would start on a lot of Power 5 teams, is kind of a depth role player for this defense, especially on the inside of this defensive line. That couldn't be bigger. And that we talk about this a lot, the importance of having depth on the defensive line, being able to cycle those guys in and out throughout a game when you get to the fourth quarter against the Utah team that last year when USC didn't have the depth, kind of grinded this team down. It's hard to see that happening because of how deep and talented they are up front. And on the edge, Solomon Byrd, he was a guy that we didn't really talk about during the offseason, right? A lot of the hype went to a guy like Anthony Lucas, who is still a phenomenal player. You heard the rumblings of Solomon Byrd. I think we were all really surprised when we saw him as the first team guy in the depth chart when we talked about that a couple weeks ago. And now you get it. His ability to rush the passer, create negative plays, create havoc, it's next level. I think he's the best pass rusher on this team, and not close behind him is another guy that, hand up, I was sleeping on. And a lot of the USC fans, and again, going back to why I love doing this, you guys were like, you're sleeping on Jamil Muhammad. I spent so much time talking about Anthony Lucas, talking about a guy like Corey Foreman. Hey, Jamil Muhammad coming from Georgia State is that guy. His motor, he's phenomenal in the run game, but his motor, chasing plays down. You have Solomon Byrd, you have Jamil Muhammad. And again, not sleeping on Anthony Lucas, another guy that probably starts on the majority of Power 5 teams. You're rotating him in. This defensive line is night and day different, establishing the line of scrimmage, getting after the passer. They're checking every single box that you want to check. And I think it's really starting to become the strength of this USC defense. Now, getting back into the linebacker play, this is probably the position that we're just still trying to figure out. And obviously, Mason Cobb not playing the last couple of games, you need him right for the Pac-12 schedule. And Stanford is in the Pac-12, but more competitive teams in the Pac-12. Tackett Curtis, I think for me, it's very evident they're trying to get as many reps for him because I think everyone sees the physical traits. I mean, the sideline to sideline speed, how aggressive he is. I mean, when he tackles, when he hits, like it's a different sound that comes off those pads. That being said, a very similar conversation that we had last week where he's still learning to play at the college football level. He plays fast, but a little bit like sometimes out of control. The eye discipline isn't always there. Sometimes missing those run fits. Tackett Curtis, all the physical traits in the world, he just needs a little bit more time because he's a true freshman at the end of the day. And he's a guy that come game 7-8, and I think this is what the USC defensive coaching staff is looking like is, hey, get this guy in the field as much as we can. Let him continue to put it together because when it clicks for him up here in the head, like he is going to be one of the better linebackers in the Pac-12. Obviously, Mason Cobb, when he comes back, will be a guy that does not leave the field. Shane Lee, I think more of a depth piece in this linebacker room. I could see him playing when you're playing a team like Utah that wants to pound the rock on you. Shane Lee between the tackle box, like really, really physical, very, very good tackler. He's a guy that, again, when you're playing a team like Washington or Oregon that wants to spread you out a little bit, probably won't see the field as much. You'll probably see a little bit more Eric Gentry, who another guy that I think they're trying to get reps. I think he's on a little bit of a pitch count, obviously, with all the injuries that he dealt with. When Eric Gentry's peak play, I think is the best linebacker on this team. I mean, he's super special in terms of physical traits. We've talked about him. Last year, I think you saw, one, injuries. The consistency wasn't quite there. Man, Tackett Curtis, Eric Gentry, and that's kind of going back to our point. This USC defense, as good as it is starting to look, is still a work in progress. And guys like Tackett Curtis and Eric Gentry, for me, kind of in my notepads, are like, man, if they put it together, like they're going to be some of the best linebackers in the Pac-12. Now, leaning to that back end, I want to start with Kalen Bullock, who, if you guys have been listening the last couple weeks on these defensive evaluations, a little bit critical of Kalen Bullock, right? I wish you know how good he is playing that center field safety spot. That's not a problem. What the problem was for me is coming downhill, tackling in the box, being a little bit more physical. And I get that's not his game. His game is much more of a ball hawking safety in the back end. That being said, to become a complete safety, you want to see a little bit more physicality. I doubt he's listening to me talking to my laptop. That being said, the last 2 weeks absolutely has answered the bell. Super physical coming downhill. Very, very consistent tackler the last 2 weeks. And I'll tell you this, if Kalen Bullock adds that to his game in terms of coming up, being good in run support, tackling in space, he's a first-round draft pick because his coverage, his ability to take the ball away, one came off his hands Saturday night against Stanford. He's going to get those interceptions. I say he can tackle in the box. He's a guy that is going to be truly special. Another guy, Bryson Shaw, a kind of not a name that we've talked a lot about. We've talked a lot more about Max Williams. Bryson Shaw is going to be a guy that's hard to keep off the field because you talk about physicality in that tackle box. Bryson Shaw certainly looks it. Max Williams, another guy that's coming along, another guy that we've been a little bit critical about. Devontae Jackson, again, continuing to put it together. I think by the end of the year, he's going to be really good. Sierra Wright, very solid. Christian Roland Wallace probably had the worst game on defense, if I had to say. He had the pass interference. Gave up the long play to John Humphreys, which, again, they're a really good throw and catch. Sometimes when you're playing that cornerback position, like you do everything right and you still get beaten, that's okay. Christian Roland Wallace, I don't know if will be a starter, but he's going to play some meaningful snaps. He's going to be a contributor. My overall takeaway from this USC defense is that they completely dominated Stanford up front. And that's a team that historically they have, as much as the skill talent kind of lacks, they have guys like Benjamin Yurcik, who's really, really good. That was a team that USC just whipped them up front and really didn't allow Stanford to get into any of their offense. They kind of resorted to little end arounds and sweeps and just some sort of misdirection to get something going against this USC defense. It was a dominant performance from all three levels. Stanford could not get into any of their offense, but more importantly, and this is the talking point that we've been hammering home, is from the first game against San Jose State, which was a disappointing game from a defensive standpoint, we got up and said that. You always saw like this talent, the size, the speed, the athleticism has gotten infinitely better. And we were saying, hey, now this group's just got to come together. It's a lot of transfers, learning new schemes. That game against Stanford, especially in the first half with your ones on the field, absolute nails. Again, very, very little blown coverage, very little missed assignments, really good run fits. That was the most complete game that we've seen from this USC defense. And if they can continue to build off that performance, get some of these guys back like Mason Cobb healthy, I mean, we might need to start readjusting how good we think this defense could be. Because I said heading into the year, like, we just need a top 70 defense, top 50 defense. That's okay. This is a defense that I think could put up legitimately top 30, top 25 numbers. And on the opposite side of an offense that Caleb Williams has scored on over 50% of his possessions. Like every time that team touches the ball, it seems like they're moving it. It's one of the most dangerous teams in college football. I don't think people know yet because they haven't played a main stage game. But when they start getting into that meat of their schedule, I think the national media is going to figure out that this defense is for real. And again, clean up those missed assignments, like the talent's there. This is a very exciting team, but obviously you guys can see how I am just fired up about what we saw. Really, really good performance out of this USC defense. USC fans, again, appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, but more importantly, let me know in the comment section how you're feeling about the game and the defensive performance. Appreciate you guys. We might have to do an offense one just to kind of gush over it. But right now we're focusing on the defense. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. And we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.